Today on Rates and Barrels, we discuss the Yankees trade deadline plans as yet another injury has befallen a member of their starting lineup.
And what do you do if you seem to have everything, like the Dodgers? And what do you do if you seem to have nothing, but actually have some stuff, like the Mets?
Plus, we discuss the Hall of Fame case of Salvador Perez. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, July 28th. Derek Van Riper, Eno and Britt Ghiroli here with you, taking a look at some of the big market teams that we have not been discussing a lot over the past several weeks. Britt, it was brought to my attention that we don't talk a lot about the Yankees on this show.
Someone's complaining that we don't talk enough about the Yankees?
Always. Someone's always complaining about the Yankees not getting enough shine. But
see, I feel like it's always the opposite. And people are like, I'm so tired of hearing about the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, the same few teams.
On the other days, I think especially of like getting far away from them.
True.
We have talked a lot, I bet, about the Mets. Yeah, it's hard for us to talk about the Dodgers and the Yankees, I think, because they've just been excellent.
Yes. They're good. They're going to the playoffs. Wake us in October. That's what I mean. They're kind of boring.
They lost Aaron Judge, and they haven't
Bellinger yesterday.
They haven't really missed a beat, though. Like in terms of their playoff odds, they're right where they used to be.
Yes.
That's the amazing thing. So the Yankees playoff odds, 98.6% on June 1st, the day after we last saw Aaron Judge last play in a game. Playoff odds as of today, July 28th, 98.6%. Exactly the same. They were down 0.2% yesterday going into that game against the White Sox, but they won and nudged that back up. So all of this just points back to a question of, okay, are they the best team in the American League? Even though they don't have the best record, they're still behind the Rays in the division. I think there's still a lot of people out there that are questioning the quality of the Rays come playoff time. That might be a bit of a mistake. That might be a question for a different day. But I was thinking about it more in terms of, what is Brian Cashman trying to do at the deadline? Because they've got injuries piling up beyond Judge. Their offense without Aaron Judge has an 89 WRC plus. That puts them 27th during that span. The Blue Jays, the Reds, the Guardians are the only teams that have been worse. So they need bats, and they just lost another one. As Britt mentioned, Cody Bellinger now down with a grade 2 left hamstring strain. It's going to be a 4 to 6 week injury for him, according to Brendan Cuddy. So bats, plural, might be the thing that the Yankees need most. We've heard a lot about the struggles of Austin Wells with the bat. That's been a big deal. Trent Grisham's been kind of just okay this year. Jazz has underperformed. So a couple of guys that they're still going to rely on need to step up. I think Jason Dominguez would be on that list as well. His runway for playing time wide open with that combo of Judge and Bellinger. Oh, and Giancarlo Stanton still hurt. So where do you begin to find more bats for this team? Where do you see guys fitting? Because we've talked about the difficulty of finding actual roster fits, and their versatility is limited mostly to just moving a guy like Jose Caballero around as one of their last starters, if he's even a starter on this team in October.
Yeah, it is difficult, though, because you have to give a nod to defense. This is a Yankees team that at times has had bad defense. So, the number that I'm looking at here is wins above replacement, because that includes offense and defense. I'm gone to Fangraphs and just asked, among the top 20 teams in the league by playoff odds, how do these teams rank? And don't look at the numbers necessarily, because your eyes will cross. What I want you to look at is the colors. So on this map, green is good, white is bad. And so what you can see with the Yankees, if you go across, their weakest spots are shortstop, third base, and the I guess DH. I mean, not really a center field. I don't know. Let's say one outfielder, shortstop, and third base. That's a little bit problematic because some of the options out there are not good defenders. I mean, the most recent rumor, and today we're gonna put Zach Neto on 4 teams, I think. But Zach Neto would be a great offensive addition to this, and it would fit. Sometimes the Yankees take these big swings, and he would be on the Yankees for a couple of years, and he could be a great transition to George Lombard, where George Lombard Jr. is close, but are you going to just put him in the majors at shortstop? And if you are, you can move Neto to third and solve the third base problem, right? So Neto is a great big swing that they could make, but if they play him at short, they will then be minus defenders at 2 or 3 positions on the diamond, and I think that it would threaten them to some extent in the playoffs. But they're more of a team that's always been about bludgeoning the offense offensively, and then having a good pitching staff. And so, Neto would make a lot of sense for them. That would be the big swing, or CJ Abrams. But both of those guys not going to add defense to the picture.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen whether or not. I think the Angels, nothing is off limits, really. If Mike Trout went to them tomorrow and said he wanted to be traded, I think that they would seriously consider that. But, I think they're going to take bigger swings. The Nationals, on the other hand, are in that threading the needle narrative, right? Where they may trade CJ Abrams, they may not. They may say, you know what? This has accelerated our timeline. We're going to be good soon. We want him next year on this team. We want him the rest of this year, even if we think we're, a wild card team at best. So I agree with you. I think the smarter move is to get Neto. I also think George Lombard Jr.'s defense is ready now. Scouts think you can plug and play him now defensively. The offense is a little behind. The bat is a little behind. But if you're the Yankees and you're like, this kid's going to be ready, let's put him in. Let's solve this problem. I also think there's only so much that you can learn offensively at AAA. Right? I've discussed the issues with AAA. They face the same team for many days in a row now. They only travel once a week. Sometimes they face a lot of position players. The Yankees in particular have had a lot of guys that have pitched that are position players. I think to some extent, and it seems like the Yankees are getting pretty close to being like, he's learned all he can learn at AAA. Let's call him up here. Let's see what he can do here. And he's one of the few players that is already been off limits. They're not trading him at the deadline, right? So I think for the Yankees, if you make a more aggressive move like that, and you have this guy in your system who is a defensive first player, which, as you said, they haven't had that defense first, then the Yankees get better. And they get better pretty quickly. I do think they are the best team in the American League because they've held serve without Judge. I mean, I think right now, if you look at the Yankees without Judge and the Rays, it's a little bit more of a toss-up. But obviously, Aaron Judge is a huge swing in the Yankees' favor. So I think there's no question they're the best team in the American League. And what they need now is tiny tweaks to make them better. If they do go out and they upgrade a little bit, I think what we're going to see, guys, is bats. And we already saw this with the Red Sox and Nationals early trade. Bats are going to be hard to come by. Bats are going to be at a premium. So it's going to be very difficult for them to pry away some of these guys. And, I asked a executive this morning, actually, about CJ Abrams. Like, how do you compare that to the Soto deal? How do you compare, what would he command? He's like, I think, honestly, with the way offense is trending, you want something similar to a Soto kind of deal. You want those 4 or 5 impact prospects, right? Which is like, oh my gosh. So I think we're going to see a lot of pitching move. A lot of pitching change hands, but we've already seen in the Meade deal, right, that the Red Sox looked like they overpaid early on because they needed a right-handed bat. So I just don't know how much impact offense is going to be available.
Yeah, and we're limited, in those positions of need for the Yankees, and we're harping on the positions of need. I want to. Like the overall theory is they're a very good team. It's just, what would you do? And, I think one of the problems is you look at our big board and you look at their positions of need. Isaac Paredes kind of jumps out a little bit. If they, would they just DFA McMahon or reduce his role? Would Paredes make some sense? He's not the greatest defender, but he's pretty good on offense. And, I could see maybe Houston moving on because they think, at some point we get Correa back and we have that logjam again. The next one down the list that's either short or third is Matt Chapman, who is 27th on our big board. And I was looking through what he has in terms of his contract left. He has $100 million on his contract. And listen, whether or not you believe in these projections and how this works and stuff, his defense is really good. He looks like he's something close to a 3-win player. If he is that, and he ages normally, the contract's not that far underwater. It would be like sort of $20 million underwater. Let's say the Giants were willing to give you $30 million and Matt Chapman. Would the Yankees want to add that to their payroll? They would then have $25 million players. They would have Cody, Judge, Cole, Fried, and Rodon all on $25 million plus on one team. It's the Yankees. Maybe they'll do it. Chapman's got to be a dark horse in this conversation.
Yeah, like they could go something kind of boring. I mean, I don't think Curtis Mead was someone we were thinking a lot about before this weekend, but a player like that with a year or two of service time is always movable in the right sort of deal, depending on the depth that the team that trades him away has, right? So it could be someone that we're just not even thinking about that ticks the boxes of being cheap, both in terms of what it costs to get them via trade, or you could do our surplus for your surplus. In this case, the Yankees are probably trading away some pitching, right? I mean, eventually they're going to have even more pitchers than they have right now. Rodon's supposed to be back in mid-August. The bullpen's been really good, by the way. If you want to say, how have they managed to like hold things together without Judge? Pitching has been awesome. Cam Schlittler's been good. Rodon was good before he got hurt. Bednar hasn't allowed an earned run during that span. Brent Hedrick's got a .72 ERA. Paul Blackburn's below 1. Like, it's just
I got a name for
right?
you.
Yeah.
I got a name for you. It just occurred to me while you're talking. Matt Shaw.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a contender that has an extra guy there, and like maybe Shaw goes to the Yankees and you send back some pitching. Like Will Warren might be an extra guy. Clark Schmidt working his way back from another injury. Like maybe he's someone they could move. They've got prospects that aren't super far away. They got an injured prospect in Carlos Granje that teams would be interested in. So I think that's where you're kind of like, hey, the Yankees at least have that thing that a lot of teams do need and want. And you can kind of pick whether it's someone who's been in the big leagues before or a prospect that could still be a little ways away.
Yeah, I mean, we still have the Volpe trade idea. I don't mind it because Lombard's close and their usage of Volpe is more like a utility man. In terms of Jason Dominguez, I just think that, especially with the Cody Bellinger deal, but the injury right now, he plays where they need someone. So if they trade Dominguez, it's for an outfielder. So it would only be someone who's more expensive, and more of a sure thing, I guess. So I think Dominguez just happened. They're very happy to have Jason Dominguez right now.
The Chapman deal is interesting. The
Chapman thing, I mean, Chapman, like Matt
He's
Chapman.
He's the most movable of those trio in San Francisco, for sure.
Yeah.
You take pennies on the dollar if you're going to find a way to get Rafael out from under the Rafael dollars.
My buy numbers, that deal is $100 to $125 million underwater.
So you're not moving those guys. But Chapman, however, does represent really good defense. Offensively has not had a particularly good season. But I think if you're the Giants, if you're trying to win next year, because the Giants don't really rebuild, you do need major league ready or close to major league ready pitching. They need the pitching.
Yeah.
They do kind of line up with the Yankees.
All complicated by the fact that Chapman is currently injured and doesn't have a timeline. So
correct. All complicated also by the fact that, is Buster Posey, who negotiated this Chapman deal, who wanted Stars to stay in San Francisco, going to turn around and say
he was wrong already?
There's been a lot of eating crow, it feels like, already in the Bay. How much more are we going to do? I don't know. Is there a limit?
Yeah, Buster's been doing some radio here where he's gotten very defensive. So it's not good times in that front office.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, and I think they're one of the most fascinating deadlines, right? Because we know they're going to trade their veterans to be. Sorry, I know we were supposed to talk about the Yankees, but
you have to talk about the other side. You have to talk about the sellers too. If you want to figure it out. Yes,
there is an easy route where they just trade the veterans. Luis Ariz is gone, Robbie Ray is gone, or there's a burn it to the ground scenario where they get rid of Chapman and they eat money on one of those guys, and they're like, you know what? We made mistakes. This roster is terrible. There are some serious limitations the way it was constructed. So there's an easy door and a definitely more bold door. And I'm curious because Buster Posey, I think, has been on the bolder side of GMs so far, right? Trading for Devers, hiring Tony Vitello. What do they do here? They're an interesting team. Logan Webb, right? I know he said he wouldn't move him, but people say that all the time and then they move him.
The guy that was most intriguing to me as a trade deadline piece that no one was talking about as such got hurt in Monday night's game. That's Casey Schmidt. He's going to have an MRI on Monday. Tuesday.
He would fit your kind of right-handed, could play third base, surprisingly.
He's having a breakout year, right? I mean, 21 homers, easily a career high. It's this kind of strange profile where he doesn't walk much, so it's low OBP. It reminds me of like the good versions of Jake Berger as a hitter with more defensive value because you can play him at a couple of different spots and he can play those spots pretty well. That's the kind of guy that I think the Giants would have actually found a really robust market for. And maybe this ends up being the precautionary MRI. Hopefully that's all it is. But I think those are the types of players on the Giants roster that if I were looking at them trying to find upgrades for my team, I'd be looking at guys more like Casey Schmidt.
And by the way,
it's a good call.
My rise to raise continues to gather steam with this matrix I've made. I don't think the Dodgers. I mean, I guess the Dodgers could. The Dodgers. The only weakness the Dodgers really have is at second base. If you're looking across the thing, but the Rays are there with them. The Braves count as a weakness, but they're not. It's Ozzie Albies. He's fine. So I don't see, other than the Rangers, I think the main contestants for Luis Arraez's abilities would be the Rays, Dodgers, and Rangers in terms of need at second base.
Yeah.
So the updates on Aaron Judge have been limited. He is with the team right now in Chicago. So is Giancarlo Stanton. We don't have timetables for either one. We're getting the vague. We expect them to return this season. And you're like, thanks. That's super helpful. But we believe that, right? Like they're both coming back this year, right? They're not trying to like cover something up on us, are they?
I don't know. I don't have insight into their
I mean, I don't know.
history.
That would be a question for people on the Yankees beat. Like if there's weather, I haven't heard any buzz about that, but wouldn't be unprecedented. Teams kick out timelines all the time and kick them out and kick them out and kick them out. And all of a sudden he's out for the season. You would need some kind of meaningful update, I would hope, by mid-August in terms of like when is he coming back to this team? But I don't know. Stranger things have happened. DVR. That seems more like a
heals when
hockey
it
thing.
heals. It's an injury.
They are weird about timelines, though. Yes,
Yeah.
sure. But yes, they have been very weird about when he's returning.
Yeah, I guess it does feel ominous that with the ribs too, could there be some thoracic outlet situation? What's going on in there? Is it just a bone bruise and they're waiting, or is there a bone bruise plus, a muscular aspect to it where, the oblique and they're waiting on the oblique and the waiting on this? I mean, the way it was described it sounded like a bone bruise, and sometimes those bone bruises take a while to heal. And I think, it's just a sort of wait and see, wait until it stops hurting kind of deal. Keep imaging it, looking at it. And bones sometimes take longer to heal than ligaments and muscles.
But multiple bats seem very likely for the Yankees. Could be at a variety of different price points too, given some of the options they have. A near certain upgrade with a rental catcher to pair with Austin Wells. I don't know why Austin Wells has fallen off this much. I think back-to-back 3 WAR seasons, the defense is still good, and you can live with a glove-first catcher behind the plate. It just starts to become a problem when you have injuries in the top half of that lineup, and you've got guys like Caballero and Wells both playing every day, right? Ideally, it's like one spot you're punting, not multiple spots.
Right. Yeah. This is a handy cheat sheet. Sorry, we just got it for those listening, like right before the show. And I'm like, this is so much easier to go through team needs.
Yeah, it's like a big checklist, really, to kind of figure out like what is likely to be upgraded here in the next week or so.
Yeah,
Philly's corner outfield. Look at that, super white.
Yeah,
always. That's permanent. That's just permanently shaded that way. Every July, if we look at that, it's going to be that same pale, like barely green or white sort of color. Let's hit a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about the Dodgers. It's been a minute. Like, what are you going to try to fix with this team, or what are you going to try to upgrade with this team at the deadline? Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. Dodgerland, things are generally pretty good. The little concern you might have that's lingering is that Shohei was supposed to throw his second bullpen on Saturday, and he didn't because he didn't feel great coming off of the first one. And a bit like the Yankees Judge timelines, the Dodgers are saying he'll pitch again this season, which if he was throwing a bullpen last week, all signs are pointing to that still being very much on the table. So your worst case scenario is that Shohei can't pitch again this year. And that doesn't seem like what's going to happen right now. I'm more worried about Will Smith, actually. That injury seems to be more problematic than they initially let on. And I was trying to just look through them, what is the relative weakness of this team? We know they project as the best team in baseball. The gap between the Dodgers and the Yankees by WAR projection is as large as the gap between the Yankees and the Tigers. So the Yankees are second in WAR, the Tigers are seventh. Dodgers are one, Yankees are two. So that's just the way the Dodgers are built. The main thing I see is that they're not as good against lefties as a lineup as they are overall. So if you're going to get them, you're going to get them with lefties. And a lot of what they've done this season happened before Tommy Edman came back. So Tommy Edman does give them a bit of a bump in that regard. He's done really well against lefties. He'll play against all of them, of course. The bullpen looks really good compared to how it looked last year. They're going to get Edwin Diaz back soon. That's likely to happen on Wednesday, according to Katie Wu. So you've got a repaired Tanner Scott pitching really, really well. You've got quality depth really all the way down to that sixth spot. If I'm looking at bullpen upgrades, it's basically to say, I want more here in case someone gets hurt, or I want someone better than Blake Trinan to be my last reliever on the playoff roster in October, right? This is a really good and really deep pen as things stand right now. So, yeah, looking at your chart, where did you feel like the true weakness was with this Dodger team, if there even is one?
You say there's a little bit of weakness at second base, and they need help against lefties? Zach Neto.
See, another Zach Neto suitor. Amazing.
Ridiculous. Let's get you a t-shirt. Oh my gosh.
I do think there's something on the infield. Alex Freeland is on this roster and hasn't played in 2 weeks. So I don't know what that says to me. That says to me that there's kind of an open spot there, right? That there could be a player that could be more effective. To me, Tommy Edman is somebody that I'd rather move around than be an everyday starter at one spot. And so he's been playing second and third for the most part. So that's where I'd be looking, is somebody who can maybe platoon with Max Muncy at third, like a right-handed infielder is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think catching depth is definitely higher on their list. I also think when you're the Dodgers, you don't necessarily have this kind of roster. You don't necessarily have to address big league needs. You can just stockpile minor league depth, which is what they've done in the past. They have a lot of outfield right now. Why couldn't you, especially because I mentioned bats are going to be at a premium, why not deal Alex Call, right? I think they would field offers on somebody like that, see what you can get back, because there's not a whole lot of offense out there. I also think, as I mentioned, they have a big system. They have a lot of outfield guys. They're going to be involved in deals that we don't necessarily are like, oh, they got to address this, a.k.a. Tarik Skubal, right? We all know that they're probably going to be involved in Skubal. We all know they have the prospects capable of pulling off a Skubal deal if they want. So exactly. So we sit here and say, what do the Dodgers need? And I don't think that's how the Dodgers think. They're like, how do we make ourselves a juggernaut better?
Yeah.
Who cares if we don't need starting pitching? Tarik Skubal, come on down, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, they're going to add a little catching depth, but also these are the Dodgers. They have the capability to make the big moves. Conversely, a lot of people think the Rays have the ability to make a big moves this year too at the trade deadline. They've got the roster, they've got the pieces if they want to trade for a guy like Skubal, and also in years where they've been kind of good, they've had a tendency to go for it. There's also new ownership, everything with the stadium. I think they feel like I have heard from multiple people that the Rays have been very aggressive. So obviously we've talked about Skubal a lot, going to keep talking about him, but I think that the Dodgers are laying in the weeds on some of these bigger names who could become available. And they're always going to be in. They're always going to be in.
And I could also see them just being like, why, we've talked on the show about making your strength stronger rather than focus on your weakness. This chart is about your weaknesses. If you look at this chart and you say, our weakness is backup catcher, and backup right-handed infielder, maybe you just ignore those, because those weaknesses, when you compare them to other teams, are just, almost irrelevant. And, Dalton Rushing looks like a starting level catcher to me. You may not like him as a person on the field. He's a madman out there. But when it comes to, power, patience, like he's got it all really. And he looks like a really good offensive catcher that is not terrible defensively. And so I don't know that I need to put Ryan Jeffers on this team, because then I got to coach Ryan Jeffers got to figure out all our pitchers and got to do all this stuff. And, oh, by the way, I can't even DH Ryan Jeffers, while I'm teaching him about the staff because I've got a pretty good DH. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. You're right. It may that's why I wanted to just throw Neto out there because they could just overwhelmingly answer that need in the infield, or they could just be like, screw it, let's get Skubal.
They could also get CJ Abrams if he's available. I just think that the way we think about the Dodgers should be a little different than the way we think about other teams based on the money they have, the prospects they have, how they operate, right? Do they need another starting pitcher? No. Does it matter if Skubal becomes available? Also, no.
Yeah, I think part of the interesting thing about Skubal and the Dodgers is that they've got plenty of quality prospects close to big league ready. They could outbid a lot of the other teams that would be interested. So that's part of it. And you're right. I think you're both right that they operate kind of on their own level as far as what they do at any opportunity. They throw piles of money at problems in free agency to get what they want. They go out and make the upgrades they need at the deadline, and life continues to go on. I think the thing that also makes this team vulnerable that people don't like to talk about, you still have Blake Snell working his way back from an injury. He's barely pitched this year. Tyler Glasnow still hasn't come back from his injury yet. He faced live hitters last week, getting close to a rehab assignment. I think Snell's got a rehab start Wednesday. Maybe his next start after that is like a 75 pitch start with the Dodgers sometime next week. I think we make a lot of assumptions about their ability to avoid injuries at a more damaging time. Yes, they have the luxury to let guys take as long as they really need to get as healthy as they can, but they do not have the ability to block out injuries completely. They just can't do that. No one can do that. So I do think they would be in the market for yet another starter, and that's even accounting for Roki Sasaki looking pretty good, right? The projections are now in line with the strikeout and walk rates that he's put up over the course of this year. He looks like a capable back-end sort of starter. Come playoff time, if you could use him as a multi-inning reliever, as a bridge to your late-inning guys, that'd be a great weapon to have if everything holds up physically with this group. So it's really health is the main concern as they continue. Every year they're going to be a little bit older. Every year the guys that have had multiple injuries in the past just get a little bit more risky.
Are we worried about health on every team pretty much when it comes down to the rotation?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course. But they've got a unique collection of guys that have had massive injuries in that group.
Yeah.
They all have them.
Yes. Could they go out and get a Kevin Gossman or even trade for a shirt? Sure, they could. They could get a lesser free agent. But knowing the Dodgers, they like to swim in that top end, right? So
really quickly,
who's going to try?
I like Roki a little better than that.
You do?
Yeah, I'm Roki pilled now. I don't know.
That's not good for you.
He's locating his slider and he's locating his harder splitter, and I don't know. I think he has ace upside. I think he also has the downside of he doesn't have his command, and so you don't start him in games 1 or 2, but 3 or 4, I'd be super happy in a playoff race to put Roki Sasaki out there. He could go 7 hitless. That's the kind of stuff he has. So I think that they're okay because they have I wouldn't want to be running Eric Lauer out there every day, but they have a cushion. They're fine. They have guys coming back. The one thing that is interesting, though, is that with River Ryan hurt, they don't really have that much in the cupboard. So it's the injured veterans coming back. It's not but we also have this top prospect. I don't think they have another prospect ready. So I agree. Even if it's not Skubal, it could be just a veteran to kind of replace Lauer, push Lauer to the bullpen. They could DFA Lauer. That's how they got him.
Just a couple more thoughts here. I know we're picking nits on this roster, but since May 1st, Dalton Rushing got off to a great start at the plate. He's got an 85 WRC+. He's got 4 homers in his last 55 games. He had the game where he was struggling to catch Ohtani.
That's average for a catcher.
85, man. Like, I don't know.
That's average. Catchers have like an 86 WRC+ as a group.
If you're not convinced that Will Smith is back at the end of the season, I think you have to go out and get one of those veterans to pair with him just to be safe. I think that would be a pretty big mistake.
It's a hard land to upgrade, though, catching wise. When you look at it, like, is Adley Rutschman going to get dealt? Probably not. We saw Shea Langoliers get hurt. The Rockies going to part with Goodman.
Rutschman's interesting, I guess. But then Rutschman, Rushing, and Will Smith on the same team next year? It's like, what?
Solve that problem later. Nah, I'm not encouraging that level. I'm encouraging the rentals. I think that'd be like a Ryan Jeffers or a Tyler Stevenson. These guys you're not going to look at those guys on paper and be like, wow, they got a lot better. They have a number 2 or a number 1B or however you want to pair them up where they're not as dependent upon Dalton Rushing as they are at this moment. And the key is just the flipping of Rushing being a left-handed hitter. That makes things more difficult when you face a left-handed starter, right? That's what I'm talking about overall. It's not that he's not a good player.
Tyler Stevenson would make sense, I guess, yeah. I think for some reason the bidding is getting really tight on Ryan Jeffers, so maybe they'll just pivot and take Stevenson.
It is also funny, though, since that fast start, Andy Pages, closer to a league average sort of guy, 105 WRC+ since May 1st. He was phenomenal his first 5 weeks, just really good. Kyle Tucker, league average since that bad first month at 101. Teoscar Hernandez, 100 WRC+. Mookie Betts, 89. I don't know. I hope something keeps Dodgers fans up at night.
I think it could be. We made the argument for a big swing on Skubal, but I think there could be a big swing on offense, actually. Because the offense looks a little bit old.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to look old in October, but famous last words from me. So I think there are some upgrades out there for this team, and I have little doubt that they will be pursuing them aggressively between now and Monday. Let's hit one more break. We're going to get to a more challenging problem. We're going to take a look at the Mets. How does David Stearns begin to put the pieces back together with the trade deadline? Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. Britt, if I asked you, what are the 3 biggest problems with the Mets as they are currently constructed? You're trying to start fixing flaws. You got to make a list. What's top of your list in terms of what can be fixed in the near future?
Oh, what can be fixed? Like at the trade deadline?
You're not going to solve it all then, but what are you starting to improve? Because even if it's a 5-step solution and you take steps 1 and 2 in the next week, then you're at least part of the way to where you need to go.
Yeah, I think if you're the Mets and you're going to do this the way that David Stearns wants to do it, you're building it up from within. So I think you have to get younger. Some of the younger players that have come up have been their bright spots, as opposed to some of the guys who have been around for a while. I think you have to look at the bullpen, which has been the best. Most of the year, they haven't been able to pitch. Starting pitching-wise, the offense has underperformed. But the bullpen has been a rare bright spot for good chunks of the season. And I think when you look at their bullpen, Luke Weaver's probably the top available arm. I think we can all agree on that, right? He's a guy who has team control for next year. So I think if you're David Stearns, you're dealing not just expiring deals, but you're dealing guys like Brazoban, who have been really good, who have that control, who you can get back big league ready, young position players and pitchers, because their rotation, as we can all agree, needs work. The core of the position players, they need to continue to supplement. And I think the Mets at the trade deadline hold a special card in that bullpen pieces are usually the ones that teams will overpay for. Teams will overpay for a reliever if they feel like that's all they need to get them over the hump to get to the postseason. So if I'm the Mets, I'm dealing 3, maybe 4 arms out of that bullpen. I know Lindor has been in trade rumors a lot. I don't really see a scenario where they trade Francisco Lindor. I think if you go out and you make those moves and you get as many close to big league ready prospects as you can, and you reset it next year by adding a starting pitcher or 2, because let's face it, Peralta is another guy who's going to go, but he hasn't been good either. So really the trade value of what you thought you were going to get for a guy like Freddie Peralta is probably not going to be there, though someone's going to bite. I think if David Stearns resets it in that fashion, guys, I'm not even talking specific positions of need, because the Mets are just a mess right now. They're not if we can upgrade at third base, we'll be a great team. No, They just have holes everywhere. The great experiment of letting Pete Alonso go and kind of breaking up this core has failed. So if you got to start it over again, I think you have to trade 3 to 4 pieces out of that bullpen. You got to deal Peralta, basically everything not nailed down, and you have to reset it that way. That's what I would do. I don't have specific targets that I think they should go after. I think they need to make the best deal they can to trade a guy like Luke Weaver, to look at these bullpen pieces and say, like, what can we get for these guys? I don't keep anybody because I know some of these guys are under control. I know you're trying to contend next year. Relievers are cyclical, right? They're so fickle. You trade these guys when they're at their apex, even if they have a year of control next year. We don't know what's going to happen with the lockout. You trade Peralta. You trade anyone out of that rotation, honestly. Not the younger guys, but you trade, like, if someone wants Manaea, sure, we'll listen. Well, like any of those guys you don't think is part of that next core group of Mets players. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I struggle with this team because, by wins above replacement, they're projected as a top 10 team still. I know that's kind of crazy to hear, but
no, it's not.
The pieces are supposed to be better. And, like whatever they trade, like they're not going to get a position player that's good enough to break into this lineup, I don't think. Once you figure in contracts and back up like their history and stuff, like I think it's Benj, Ewing, Soto in the outfield. It's Bichette, Lindor, Simeon in the infield. And I think first base and DH are up for discussion. But I doubt you're getting for Luke Weaver a guy that you can slot into first base or DH. Maybe because it's DH there's a inherent flaw there. They can't play defense. Maybe you could look for that. I think what you would want to do.
Look for that. Soto's your DH, like pretty soon.
You can't be a long term, right? So it doesn't make sense. And I think that they've decided that first base is a place that they're going to mix and match. And Young is actually okay. He's not bad. He's old. Doesn't have a high ceiling, but he's not bad. So he could be when you're just your stopgap cheap guy at first. You got to keep DH open for Soto at some point. So I don't see a lot of wiggle room on this offense. And so what I would do, I think the only thing I'm agreeing with you, but what I would do is just restock pitching and just give me pitching. Give me guys that we think we can fix or this or that. I want to have a great bullpen soon. I want to have, we believe, I think, the Mets believe in their ability to coach pitching, and they've done a pretty good job with Christian Scott and Zach Thornton. They, still got a chance that Tong figures it out. McClain has been a win for them. So just give us your raw clay in the pitching side, and we will mold that into more and more pitching. And then offensively, that's the part where I'm stuck. Where am I wrong? Like it's like there's all the places are taken up.
You're not wrong.
I don't think you can get rid of Semien because unless you just DFA him, because he's after next year he's still got 2 and 45. Like nobody's trading for Semien at 2 and 45. I guess if you want to be like scorched earth and be like, hey, do something, then I think maybe you just DFA Semien and try to throw some money at second base. You just got Semien though. I know, but
do you admit it was a mistake? I agree with you.
I think you could DFA Polanco. I mean, that's not that's sure. There's 1 year left on that, and it was a smallish deal, and you can say that hey, the Yankees and the Mets can kind of swallow this deal. But also Polanco, you haven't really seen him, so why not give him a chance to play and be healthy? But if he doesn't do anything in the last couple of months, you could DFA him and create a roster spot, so that you could have 1 or 2 roster spots on offense to play with, but they're pretty locked into this team.
Yes and no, though. I agree with you. I think you get prospects, and like I said, you get guys who are kind of major league ready, because a year or two ago, we were sitting here talking about them being loaded with other guys, right? Brett Beatty, Francisco Alvarez, these baby Mets that never got it done. There's no guarantee that these young guys who have had good starts are going to continue on that path, right? So I do think you get the best prospects you can, and hope that these guys like Ewing and these other guys continue to be good. But there's no guarantee. There's been a massive underperform pretty much.
I guess you could spend some money in the outfield and put somebody ahead of or somebody in the mix with Benj, Ewing, and Soto, right? So you can be we have 4. We're the Mets. We should have 4 really good outfielders.
I think that's what they were thinking when they added Luis Robert. And it was before Ewing and Benj were both like clearly up on the roster. They were part of the plan for this year, but Benj making opening day and Ewing getting promoted when he did, like those timelines were written in pencil, not pen, at the time they brought Luis Robert. And so I could see them following a similar path. I mean, Jorge Polanco, 2 years, $40 million. If you DFA him after 101 plate appearances, that is eating a big mistake. I think they'll hold off on that. Maybe they'll move on from the Beatty-Vientos combo.
Yes.
I must see something different.
I don't think Vientos has any value anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. You just add him to a trade if someone wants him as a bench bat or something, or just move on at some point in the winter. He's not part of your next good team at this point. I must see something different than everybody else sees when I look at Francisco Alvarez. I know he's been hurt. I talk about this every time, but he's on pace to be about a 3-win catcher this year over a full season. He's not their problem.
He's always hurt, though. The problem is he's always hurt.
He's a catcher. Catchers get hurt all the time.
He's one of the better offensive catchers when he's in there.
He's a good player, but the problems, the simple list of problems for this team, I think we've been circling around it. They're 26th in WRC plus this year. I know Soto has been on the IL twice. Lindor was out for a while. If they had both been healthy all season, are we saying they're average, close to like a 100 as a team? That's still not what you paid for. So they're still underperforming at a few different spots. They're tied for 20th in defensive WAR, so the pieces still don't quite fit on that side. And that limited roster flexibility, I mean, Bo Bichette's got player options, $42 million for each of the next 2 years. I assume he's exercising that at least for 2027. We'll see what next year brings.
That was the biggest mistake he made.
That was a big one. And I mean, Lindor, like those rumors that surfaced from Mike Francesa a few weeks ago, like it's not happening. 5 years, $170.5 million left. He turns 33 in November.
He's not trading him, dude.
He's a great player. Like what? Like you'd be blowing another hole into the roster that you have to go fix. You don't have the next guy ready.
And I think what they missed when they blew up the previous iteration of the Mets was the culture standpoint, was how important a guy like Pete Alonso is in that clubhouse, and Nimmo and McNeil. Like, you can blow those up and you can assemble piecemeal other pieces, and it doesn't mean that the soup is going to taste good, right?
So what do you
doesn't
make
mean
of
the soup is going to work.
What do you make of the purported frostiness between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor?
Do I think it's true, or am I surprised by it?
Yeah, actually, I've got another version of the same question.
What do you got?
I'm going to make an assumption that in every clubhouse, there are guys that don't get along or they're not buddy-buddy, right? Like, that's typical. There are rifts. There are guys that they're fine with each other, but they're not friends. Like, there's lots of different iterations of that. Personalities mesh only so well. When you put that many people together for that long of a period of time every year, you will have some conflicts. You will have good players on teams that are not best friends. And sometimes we don't even know about it, because if the team plays well or it's not in New York, we just go on with our lives, right? So is this a real problem, or is this just two guys that should be co-faces of the franchise that just don't go have dinner together?
Yeah, I think the latter. I covered Juan, Lindor, a little bit on and off through some SNY stuff for years. I don't think either guy is a bad guy. I don't think either guy is a clubhouse cancer, which I think that this is a case where, they're not super close. They don't really get along. Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor didn't really get along either. And nobody had a problem with that. Like, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer didn't get along for years. Like, I don't think that hurt either one of their careers. Winning papers over, like, you're right, winning papers over everything. Did you ever cover a team that won, or heard about a team that won that had bad clubhouse culture? Right?
Like, years later, you might get some stories in a biography or something, but while they're winning, it's not in the headlines.
Even then, like, if the culture, even then, it's not the culture. It's like, oh, they were wild. Like, wasn't the Mets team in the 80s or something, like a wild team? But anyway, when teams lose, it's always the culture is bad. So it's always what directly impacts the other. If the Mets were winning, nobody would care that Soto and Francisco Lindor weren't besties. The problem is they've both been hurt. Okay, right? They both had not good years. And last year was a disaster as well. So, this is going to continue to be a thing, I think, until the Mets win and start winning consistently, and they don't make it a thing anymore. But make no mistake, David Stearns has his work cut out for him. You're right. You're not going to get an impact position player for Luke Weaver. The best thing you can do is restock that farm system prospect-wise. Get guys who you think are as close to, helping the big league team as you can, that have some high upside, that you can turn into something, because this is a team with a poorly constructed roster, with a lot of money committed, that has continually underperformed, right? David Stearns is on the hot seat. We know this. This is New York. It's going to be a huge year in 2027 for them to see what they do. So
I honestly think that what they'll do is maybe spend some big money on like a Skubal or something, and bet on run prevention and just hope basically that the offense is above average and bounces back. Because there's so many things that are locked in. Nobody's trading for Bichette. I think even Lindor, we didn't talk about the other side of this. How many people are on the other side of this are like, oh yes, I will take all that money and Lindor, and an aging shortstop that I'm not sure can play shortstop for me forever. I'm not saying that Lindor has to move off. I'm just saying, traditionally shortstops move off at the end of their careers. So, and you're getting that with Lindor. So I don't see that any of these, and then the young guys in Ewing and Bench, why would you trade them unless you're getting something great back? There's not a lot of wiggle room on this roster.
I do think, Freddie Peralta gets traded. Even he said he maybe just made his last start as a Met. This has not been the year anybody expected. We talk about Citi Field being a great place to pitch. It just has not been the follow-up to a great year in 2025 that many people would have expected. I would imagine Freddie is going to be viewed similarly to Kevin Gausman in terms of expected impact. Teams that are looking at him are going to say it's been a bad year, but we think we can tweak something. We think we can get him back to at least 2024 levels when he was a sub-4 ERA, 121 whip, racked up 200 Ks for the Brewers that year. But the weirdest thing of all about Freddie is that the bloated ratios, that can happen, right? You can have a home run issue. You can be unlucky with guys on base. We can all talk ourselves into a simple explanation for why you're not yourself for even 2/3 of a season. The K rate being down, a career low 22.1% strikeout rate for Freddie Peralta, an underlying skill that the one skill we thought Freddie Peralta definitively had was the ability to miss bats. That's changed. So he's really dropped from that fringy number one, that clear number two starter to more of a mid-rotation sort of guy. And I do think that's going to limit the quality of the return you get, even though you're obviously going to trade him and try to get some future value back.
Yeah, I somebody asked me about him on rankings or Q&A or some Discord. I can't remember where, but one thing that I wanted to point out was that this is maybe the streakiest pitcher in baseball.
He might still exists.
No, but I mean streaky on a half season level.
Okay.
Freddie Peralta for 3 years in a row had a 4.6 ERA in the first half and a 2.8 in the second. He had a over 4.5 in the first half and an under 3 in the second. He did that for 3 years in a row. So I feel like there's some small adjustment he can make. I can tell you that the four seam has lost a tiny bit of velo, a half tick of velo, a little bit of life. It's got a little bit more horizontal break than usual. There's some little things here and there, but I feel like he tweaks these things. He emphasizes some pitch instead of another, and he goes on a real run. And I still think he has that he has it in him. He's that kind of guy that you're hoping to pay get you there prices for. You say, oh yeah, I'll get him. He'll be my 4 or my 5, and then you're hoping that he hits that stretch and becomes a top 3 starter for you. So I would actually be pretty interested, because I would think that the price is down. Who do you think will cost more in trade, Peralta or Gausman?
I think it's going to be roughly the same. I think the teams that are calling on one are calling on the other, and it's more are you willing to give a little more to get one of them? Who would you pay a little extra for?
It might be. I think it might be Peralta, just because Gausman doesn't look any better right now.
No, neither of them do. I will say this though: it feels like sometimes when you're those guys, you go to a team that all of a sudden is in contention, and it is a shot. It is a shot in the arm.
You
right?
start throwing harder a little bit.
You do start to. Situations matter. You've been playing. Both of those teams have been going nowhere for a little bit, right? I'm not saying they're going to turn into aces, but sometimes you do see the change of scenery help. Sometimes you do see these guys kind of find one last little year. So,
well, the Mets can also trade Clay Holmes. So, I mean, I think we're making the argument here to trade Clay Holmes, trade Freddie Peralta, trade Luke Weaver, and basically try to restock pitching. We'll see. Maybe they can get some interesting hitters, but I would just focus on restocking pitching and having a lot of arms for next year.
Isn't Clay Holmes still hurt too?
He's close to returning.
At least it's not an arm injury,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It says late July, early August. Yeah, I know. But that's something where, like, of course, the Mets, like, that to me was a huge blow for their season, right? A huge turning point season-wise for them. And obviously, you're not going to sell super, super high because there still is a little bit of that unknown.
Yeah, I bet actually, I could see him not going and then them discussing an extension with him, too, because he might be an easy guy to extend because he's not gonna get the big top money. And so you're like, all right, I want a good number 3, gets a lot of ground balls. Give me Clay Holmes for 3 years,
Yeah. Yeah. He to me is an interesting case. There's a case for keeping him versus everybody else. For sure.
Let's trade the big market hats in for a small market hat for 2 minutes before we go. We had Hall of Fame induction weekend in Cooperstown. Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones, Jeff Kent, now in Cooperstown. The dialogue this weekend started to focus on Salvador Perez because he became the Royals' all-time home run leader. He passed George Brett, and it got people wondering, how does his resume actually stack up to Hall of Fame catchers? I saw there was a note from Jared Kohler. Jared Kohler KC on X shared a note that Sal would have had 397 home runs up to this point in his career. He played all of his games in Cincinnati, and he probably lost 20 or so homers from the partial season in 2020, which that latter point especially, that's true of a lot of guys that played through that era, right? You play a 60-game season instead of 162, especially if it's a peak year potentially. That's lost production. I think over time, as the players that played through that pandemic year end up on ballots, I think that context will be in the minds of writers. I'm not worried that that'll get completely washed away. The if he played in Cincinnati part is interesting, but that's all of his games, not just half of his games. And it got me wondering if we do a good enough job contextualizing park factors when it comes to Hall of Fame resumes, be that pitchers that were in difficult hitter environments or hitters that were in more pitcher-friendly places. Anyway, all that context now in your minds, like, what do you think about Sal as a possible Hall of Famer? Because my snap reaction was no, and the more I looked at it, I didn't become any more convinced that he had a very strong case. He looks like a classic Hall of Very Good player for me.
There is no statistical argument for Sal Perez to the Hall of Fame.
Which is, it's sad. Like, he's a good, likable player, a modern face of that franchise.
That's a mean thing. Yeah, I feel like
I know that sounds really mean, but it's like we have park factors. We have a stat called WRC Plus that adjusts for park factors, and for his career, he's a league average player. You've got a guy who hit 260. That would be on the low side for a Hall of Famer. His OBP was 299. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can't imagine there's a lot of sub 300 OBP, Hall of Famers. He has 318 homers. If you want to give him 400 in Cincinnati with 2020, those are also things that didn't happen. And, his WRC plus would still be league average, theoretically at least, because he would be the Cincinnati park factor would still sort of rob him of all that. So the framing numbers haven't been great. The defensive numbers haven't been great. The WAR is like, he has 18 Fangraphs WAR and 50 is supposedly where the Hall of Fame starts. So he's really far down there. And I do appreciate that there are these soft factors. And that's why I wanted to say statistically, there's no argument. The soft factors are multiple Gold Gloves, obviously the leader of his team, a World Series title. He plays a position where there are soft factors that we cannot capture in the stats. So, there are things like he could be a great game caller. His stats have been pretty good. And if he's a great game caller, you'd still have to give him 30 wins of game calling to get him in. You know what I mean? Like, it's I'm willing, if he had like 40 wins and he would be on the low end for Hall of Famers, then I would take those soft factors and I'd say, yes, I would. I'm predisposed to voting Sal Perez in the Hall of Fame, but I just can't.
He's such a great guy, and he clearly loves baseball. And I think those are some of the soft factors you were talking about.
Yeah.
And he has, what is he, 36 years old now, right? 36? And he's played a very punishing position for a very long time. So there's a lot to like about this guy who has over 1,800 games played. I think it's like 1,400 ballpark at catcher, an incredibly demanding position. But yeah, it is, as a Hall voter, Hall of very good. I wish you had been a little bit better, Sal Perez, because I think he embodies everything the Hall of Fame is about, from the characteristics, the integrity, the guys who meant so much to their team. Obviously, as you mentioned, just past George Brett, he could get in later on a committee, maybe, or at least get some traction on one of those committees later. I think that's the more likely scenario. He gets a little more traction on that. But this isn't like a whole lot of debate. Yes, he had some World Series wins. It's not like the guy went on a run where he won 5 in a row,
Yeah.
So really great career. Hall of very good for sure. Really just a class act. It'll be sad. I'm starting to think about that with Verlander going. Sal Perez, obviously, days are numbered. Max Scherzer, like we're reaching the end of some of these greats. Like imagine watching a Royals game where Sal Perez isn't there. It's an odd feeling, right? So just want to make sure, like statistically, yes, but Sal Perez, just an A+ human being. Remember a few years ago when he went to some wiffle game randomly and started playing? Like the guy has just joy for the game. And not saying we're handing out participation trophies in Cooperstown, just saying I have a lot of love for Sal Perez, the way he plays the game, the way he goes about his business.
And I'm willing to listen. Like if there are people that want to make the statistical argument for Sal Perez in the Hall of Fame, I'm willing to listen. Like I said, I'm predisposed to voting him in, but I just can't. I can't find a thing where I'm like, okay, this plus this thing we can't quantify. Yeah, he's in. And
I'm a small hall gal. Like we're letting too many people in kind of feeling.
I'm more big hall, but yeah.
Like, it's going to get watered down if we're going to let too many people in. But anyway.
That's true.
I just want to watch everybody who has to vote fight each other about it, and I'll just eat a sandwich and relax and not stress about it. But if you look at the baseball reference WAR totals, he's 31st among catchers, 35.2 WAR on the baseball reference calculation. So a pretty big difference across. But even if you look at Jay Jaffe's JAWS system, you look at the peak 7 years, like even in those areas, he still falls just a little bit short. Maybe a guy that will end up sticking around as a manager. I mean, there's other paths in for Sal, and I think an easy candidate to have his number retired in Kansas City. I think that's a lock. Like a Royals Hall of Famer for sure, even if he's not headed to Cooperstown with the resume he's put together. But congrats to him on taking over that home run lead from George Brett in Kansas City. We need to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord. Weigh in on the conversation. Let us know what we're missing about Sal Perez. Is there enough there in those soft skills that bridges the gap from the numbers we'd like to look at and kind of puts him over the top to get him into Cooperstown one day? That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.